The UFC is headed back to Canada, and they've got two people in the main event that could not live farther away from Canada. But either way, we have a solid fight card with 14 fights, a very good main event, and a very good co-main event. My name is Angelo. This is We Want Picks. I'm going to break down the entire UFC Edmonton fight card, giving you my picks, predictions, and DraftKings fantasy plays. Before we break down this card, let's take a quick look at the success that we had on the last card. The last card was UFC 308. Overall, a very good card for us. We made a bunch of money on the betting side, and yet again, we had the best DraftKings fantasy ownership projections on planet Earth. You should be used to hearing that by now. Week in and week out, I have a graphic pretty much exactly like this one, where I show you the ownership projections from us and every single one of our competitors. And when I say competitors, I'm talking about real competitors, not Joey Dickhead's Patreon. I'm talking about real companies like Skotastic, Roto Grinders, companies that have millions and millions of dollars invested in them, that their only existence relies on providing solid DFS information. And we beat them every single week. Every single week. The couple of guys that We Want Picks somehow produce better ownership projections than these massive companies that have parent companies and tons of investment in them. It is insane, but we continue to do it. Our margin of error for UFC 308 was 2.99%. Nobody came anywhere close. The next closest was 3.9%, almost a full point difference. And when you're competing against hundreds of thousands of people, that point means the world. The ownership projections are included in everything that we do. We have a full suite of DraftKings fantasy stuff in our offering, included the optimizer. This optimizer will be preloaded with the ownership projections. A couple clicks of the button, and you can build a DraftKings fantasy lineup. You can build 150 DraftKings fantasy lineups with a couple of clicks. We also have a full cheat sheet. This cheat sheet will be populated on Friday afternoons after weigh-ins, and you're going to get the ownership projections, the scoring projections, leverage plays. That's a proprietary calculation that we put together that basically says and scores each fighter how you should use them compared to other fighters on the slate, meaning this is a lowly owned person who is projected to score high. Here's your leverage score. We also identify if this person should be used in a cash game, if they should be used in a guaranteed prize pool. The amount of data, insight, and information that you get as part of our DraftKings fantasy package is insane. The best part about all of this is only $10 for an entire month. And that $10 includes not just the DraftKings fantasy stuff, but also the betting stuff. We have a full suite of things for FanDuel, Prize Picks, Underdog, anything you could ever want or need heading into a fight week, we have. It's $10 for all of it. No weird tiers. We don't separate products. $10 for every single thing for an entire month. WeWantPicks.com. Click Become a Member at the top. That month includes this card, UFC Edmonton, UFC Vegas 100, UFC 309, and then UFC China. WeWantPicks.com. Click Become a Member at the top. Let's take a look at this card. UFC Edmonton has 14 fights, and we are, let's just not jinx it, do all the cross signs and pray to whoever you got to pray to. No drops yet. Obviously, weigh-ins haven't happened, but hopefully the weigh-ins go well. No fight drops, no short notice replacements, and unless a bunch of people absolutely shit the bed on the scale, we should be good to go. So let's go ahead and break this down. We're going to open up with Jamey-Lyn Horth taking on Ivana Petrovic. Jamey-Lyn Horth's a pretty powerful striker. She has good accuracy, good power. She's going to move well. She'll mix in some kickboxing. She likes to pressure forward. She is a very high IQ fighter. And in cases where even her abilities aren't quite there, she is fully aware of that fact. Her last fight's a perfect example. She was losing to Veronica Hardy. She was dropped a few times. Jacob argues that she more tripped than was dropped, but as far as I could see, she was hit very hard, and because she was hit, she fell down. But either way, she was in a fight that she wasn't winning, and she was making adjustments, and she was trying to win. She knew what she was doing wrong and trying to win. Ultimately, she's not the best fighter on planet Earth, right? So there's some fights she's going to lose. But what you love to see is the fact that she is aware. Inside that cage, she's like, this isn't working for me. I need to try this. And she makes those adjustments. Very high IQ fighter that you can at least rely on to go out there, give it 100%, and put herself in the best position to win. She's taking on sort of a clash of styles here. She's taking on a mostly grapple-heavy Ivana Petrovic. Ivana Petrovic, pretty well-rounded overall, busy striking, but really is looking to grapple. Solid wrestling, heavy pressure on top. She'll work you against the cage and then try to drag you to the ground immediately and look for a submission. Pretty early in her career at 7-1, but she's quickly evolving. She did just finish Na Liang, but you'll see that was the third round. Na Liang sucks. Na Liang is an absolute savage beast for about 1 minute, and then she gasses. Somehow took Ivana Petrovic 3 rounds to sneak out that finish. I do think Jamey-Lyn Horth wins here. I do not think she wins by finish. She is a very expensive fighter on this card. I also don't think Jamie's going to be the one grappling, so we're not going to get the 5 points for a takedown. We're not going to get control time. So it's really just Jamie winning this fight with striking, and there's not going to be a finish. So I'm going to have to fade Jamie as far as DraftKings fantasy is concerned, but I do think she wins this fight. It's striker versus grappler, essentially. It's 2024. Everybody's good at a couple things, but it's essentially striker versus grappler. I would trust Ivana a little more if Ivana was shooting actual takedowns up the middle, but she's not. She's looking to press you against the cage, and Jamey-Lyn is huge and strong, and it's going to be hard to take her down against the cage. Then we have Cody Gibson taking on Chad Anheliger. Cody Gibson is an interesting guy to break down because if you're looking just here on DraftKings Fantasy, you're going to see he just won a fight in July. He beat Brian Kelleher. And the last win that he has, got to keep scrolling. The battery in my mouse might die before I scroll to the last win that he had, is in June 2014. That's a 10-year gap between his last win and now. And you guys might hear what's happening. I have that board. If you go watch the hot take videos, I have the Vesa board. It's literally like think of an old train station. It's like, there's cards that flip and it says different things on it. It automatically changes on its own. It's loud as shit when it does. And I always get a comment from somebody. And it's, he's being helpful. I'm not trying to, and it's like, Angelo, I don't know if you know this, but your microphone pops and it's not popping. It's picking up the sound of this board going, does it once an hour. And it just happens to be when I record, that's the hour it does. Anyway, Cody Gibson won a single fight in the last 10 years. And it was against Brian Kelleher, who's no longer with the UFC. But he's interesting to break down because this view, the DraftKings view, is only the UFC. It doesn't include some of the regional wins that he's had. He's had a couple of stints in the UFC. Was on the Ultimate Fighter. Like, he's been around the block. He's not the greatest fighter in the world, but when he is a solid striker, he's huge for this weight class. He's very long and he uses that length well. He stays busy in exchanges. He likes to set up his strikes. He defends takedowns pretty well. He is primarily a striker. If you take him down, you can have success holding him there, but he'll come forward. He will start to work his own takedowns. We saw that in his last fight, his only win in 10 years in the UFC. He had a couple of takedowns, and that's why he is expensive. It is those couple of takedowns because he's taken on, we just did Cody Gibson, because he's taken on, why can't I click the right button? Chad Anheliger. Chad Anheliger is a striker. He's got some solid BJJ if he can get it to the ground. He's not great at wrestling offense or defense. He does set a nice pace. He does hit very hard. Takedown defense has failed him in the past. But if he is taken down, he will work on the ground. He's got good jiu-jitsu. It's the in-between he doesn't do that well. He can sweep. He can work his way back up. If he is on top, he's just going to tee off and look for a finish. He has 5 fights under the UFC banner. You're not going to see one here. But he has 5 fights under the UFC banner, and he's been taken down a ton. 14 times. 14 times he's been taken down in 5 fights. He was taken down 4 times in this last fight against Shalampos Grigoriou, who was just cut. And the reason I point that out is because most people are looking at this fight saying, well, Chad is very big. Cody's very big. Cody has worked on his takedowns. He had a couple of takedowns his last fight. Chad can be taken down. Cody's going to use that size and take Chad down. That's most people's breakdown. And maybe that happens. That should happen. But we just watched Chad get taken down 4 times and still be able to pull off the win. I don't trust anything here. Chad's the Canadian. He's an absolute gamer. He's got no quit in him whatsoever. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to pick Cody, and I'm not going to touch this DraftKings line with a 10-foot pole. So leave both of them out of your lineup. I just don't trust it enough. Cody Gibson should get the win. But again, we've seen Chad be a dog, and Chad's a Canadian. Then we have Serhiy Sidey taking on Garrett Armfield. This is going to be an interesting breakdown for you because I'm going to pick one side, but I'm going to tell the other side is the one that has all the value, at least in my opinion right now. We also have 14 fights on this card, so you don't need to have everybody in your lineup, right? We have 28 people to choose from for a 6-fighter lineup. On one hand, it makes it a lot easier to avoid some potential problems. On the other hand, it's a lot harder to win the giant tournament because there's too many options, too many variations, and that's where the bing, bong, boom, the optimizer can help you out. Serhiy Sidey. He's a tall, long guy. He's a good striker. He can grapple as well. Very powerful, who despite being so tall and so long, does not use his reach. He's a striker who doesn't use range. He likes to come forward. He'll pump that jab in your face, and then he'll throw big. He can be taken down. He can have his legs chopped, but even when he is taken down, his BJJ is good enough. He could sneak something out. He is shockingly chinny, though. For a guy that just moves forward and wants to strike, he gets dropped. He survives, but he gets dropped. He's taking on Garrett Armfield. Garrett Armfield is a technical striker. He's not great at anything, but he does move forward. He does put volume in your face. He will double up jabs. He'll switch stances really well. He's always working forward. He likes to stay controlled. He doesn't take a lot of risks, but he does a good job kicking your legs and then coming up to the body. He's got solid offensive takedowns. He's got good cardio, good pressure, good volume. Overall, a decent fighter. He is coming off this submission loss to Brady Highstand. You're going to see the knockdown. He had Brady almost finished. Almost finished. And then Brady just gutted it out. Was a bully. Got Garrett to the ground and ultimately submitted him. But Garrett has some power. He's got 4 fights in the UFC. He has knockdowns in 2 of them. Half his fights he has knockdowns in. We watched Serhiy just get knocked down. So this is where the breakdown gets weird. I think Serhiy wins this fight. I think Serhiy Sidey can come forward, stay in Garrett's face, maybe give Garrett some problems, be a little long, and be tricky. So I probably think Serhiy wins this fight. But Garrett is a phenomenal underdog. Garrett is a guy that can pick up the pace, can pick up the volume. The way he fought Brad Katana, he could have some success here doing the same thing. He landed 105 significant strikes. So if you need an underdog and you need to fill a slot with this sub 8,000 price point, I think Garrett Armfield is a great dog. He put up 42 points in a loss to Brady Highstand. 42 points in a loss. So I'm going to pick Serhiy because ultimately I think he's just a little too dangerous. But I think this may end up being sort of a close decision. We could have a weird situation here. Serhiy's going to be the pick, but again, if you're building a DraftKings fantasy lineup, you need underdogs. That's just the way the money works. And Garrett Armfield, I think, is a phenomenal underdog here. Then we have Alexandr Romanov taking on Rodrigo Nascimento. Listen. This is going to be the easiest breakdown and a pain in the ass breakdown at the exact same time. It should be an easy breakdown because at one point in time, Alexandr Romanov was basically the reincarnation of Brock Lesnar. His nickname is King Kong. And every breakdown I did of Alexandr Romanov for a couple of years, up until last year where he got fat as shit, for a couple of years was Alexandr Romanov comes forward like Brock Lesnar, runs through you like a train, and then rains down King Kong punches on top of you when he gets on top. And that's what he was doing. And he was cleaning up. Sub decision over Juan Espino, who's like a world level wrestler, so he struggled with him a bit. Finished Vandera, submitted Sherman. All these people, he was taking them down, beating them up, doing what he was supposed to do. Then he finally got in a tough fight. He basically 10-8'd Marcin Tybura in the first round. He obviously literally didn't, but he beat the shit out of Marcin Tybura in the first round, picked him clean up, slammed him down. But Marcin's a tough guy. He's not a guy you just get out of there. He survived. Marcin came back, won the next 2 rounds. This was at elevation. Alexandr Romanov was exhausted. But when he took this loss, it was his first loss ever, and it like took something with him. He no longer had the aura. He was no longer that like terrifying, big giant wrestler guy. Because then Volkov whooped his ass. Look at this. 0, 0, 0, 0. He did nothing. He landed nothing and did nothing. He got a little bit of fake control time, so they gave him 1 point for it. He did nothing. Volkov beat him. Then it was like embarrassing. It's like, oh, he's weighing in obese. Not just like a little, like straight up obese, like definitely needs 12 Ozempic shots to get through the day. And if he stays on this path, you're going to have to cut a hole in his roof to crate him out of his house. He shows up. He beats Blagoy Ivanov in basically a rock'em sock'em robot fight. He did get 2 takedowns, but this was basically just bink, bink, bink the whole time. And then he just lost to Jourdain Almeida. No hard feelings with that one. I personally think Jourdain's an absolute beast, and I think he can be the heavyweight champion of the world. And if Curtis Blades didn't just have him freeze up and hit those side punches, he would have won that fight too. Point being, there was a fall off here. And from Tybura forward, you don't know what version of him you're going to get. So what makes this breakdown easy is that if we get this version, the pre-2022 version, the guy who comes forward and wrestles and he's a beast, he dominates this fight. If we get this version, who might show up with bouncing titties, stepping on the scale, I don't know what you're going to get. And he's going to be in for it because he's fighting Rodrigo Nascimento. This is a grappler at heart who will stand there and strike with you. He's got good takedown defense. He's got good clean striking, and he's got good BJJ. On paper, Rodrigo Nascimento was built to beat Alexandr Romanov. He was built to say, hey, you got this sloppy heavyweight who hasn't been himself these last couple of years, whose takedowns are a bit iffy. Rodrigo Nascimento will beat him. That's what he was built for. But yeah, defend a couple takedowns, be busy with the strikes, and he'll quit. We've seen Romanov quit, which is not good. So I'm going to pick Romanov here, though, because I still believe in him. I still think he can get the wrestling going. But luckily, for the people playing DraftKings Fantasy, you have the beauty of the weigh-ins. So you'll know what he looks like before you have to lock in a lineup. You absolutely need to watch the weigh-ins for Romanov because Romanov is a guy that sometimes is fat, sometimes is not. The weigh-ins will tell you everything you need to know. If Romanov is fat as hell, Nascimento needs to be in your DraftKings Fantasy lineup. If he's looking a little slim, a little trim, like he's actually working on himself, then you should have Romanov in your lineup. Then we have Youssef Zalal taking on Jack Shore. Youssef should be in your lineup. Put him in there. I think he wins this fight. I mean, it's almost that simple. Youssef Zalal was cut last year, or 2 years ago, 2022. He was cut by the UFC. He had the draw with Damon Blackshear. There was a 10-8 involved in that. The Sean Woodson fight, okay, that's tricky. The Choi fight, that's tricky. The Ilia Topuria fight, he's the world champion now. He gave that guy fits. So he had a rough run in the UFC. He was 1-3-1, and then they cut him. And then he went to the regional scene and rebuilt himself. Got a bunch of wins, came back on short notice against Billy Quarantillo, and he smoked that dude. Smoked Billy Quarantillo. Then he comes back, he fights Jarno Errens, not the most technical guy in the world, but a pretty tough guy. A guy that'll be in your face, a guy that's hanging around, not somebody you get out of there quickly. And he got him out of there quickly. Very quickly. Youssef Zalal came back looking like a wrestling beast. Phenomenal control, phenomenal takedowns. Youssef Zalal 2.0, this version of him, is a very, very dangerous guy. And that's a far cry from what he was, because what he was, you can see decision. Win or lose. Decision. Started his career, 3 decisions. Finished the UFC career, 4 decisions. Then they brought him back, and now it's 2 subs back to back. He incorporated the wrestling, very dangerous on top, and he just has an aura about him. He was on our call-in show. You can feel it there. He has an aura about him. He's more confident than he has ever been. He's taking on Jack Shore. Jack Shore is by no means a bum, and I feel like I have to say that because the last couple of years haven't been particularly kind to Jack Shore. But he is good. He's a good grappler. He likes to move forward. He's constantly looking for takedowns. He has wrestling and striking. He's aggressive with both of them. He averages around 3 takedowns per fight. You can see 1 takedown, 3 takedowns, 2 takedowns, 2 takedowns, 6 takedowns, 3 takedowns, 4. He's getting the takedowns. He's coming forward. He's making it happen. He only has 2 losses in his entire MMA career, and they're good losses. Ricky Simone did drop him and then sub him, which that wasn't great because Ricky Simone's not necessarily the best striker in the world. Joanderson Brito kicked him in the leg so many times that you saw the bone, and that's what happened in his last fight. So this is an interesting matchup because I think Youssef Zalal smokes Jack Shore. But I'm going off the new version of Youssef Zalal and this version, the new version of Jack Shore, who got dropped by Ricky Simone and got his legs chewed up by Joanderson Brito. If Youssef Zalal gets the takedowns, he wins this fight. I think he does get the takedowns. I do think he wins this fight. Youssef will be in my lineup. He's one of my more confident favorites on this card. Then we have Charles Jourdain taking on Victor Henry. Listen, some of us have strong opinions on some fighters. And my opinion on Charles Jourdain is that he's a very exciting fighter. He's a very fun fighter to watch. He's somebody that you see his name on a card and you know he's going to be in a good scrap. I also think he's very overrated. He doesn't have clean technique. He's not very well-rounded. He's a fun striker. He's a little too open, a little too aggressive, gets himself into some trouble. And that's what happened in the last fight. He fought Jean Silva. Jean Silva, very clean striker. And Jean Silva didn't need much time to absolutely blow through. It was clear early who the much better striker was. Charles Jourdain can struggle with tons of pressure. He can struggle with people in your face. He can struggle with just durability. We saw that with the Shane Burgos fight. That was an all-timer. He is good. He is exciting, but I don't think he's as good as people give him credit for when he was earlier in his career and there was Air Jourdain and he's going to come out here and he's so exciting he can do all the things. He is an opportunistic guy. He can try to make things happen. He is very fun, but ultimately I think Victor Henry is going to get it done. Victor Henry is a guy that I think is just going to come forward, stay in his face, not back down and win the fight. The only time Victor looked like an absolute idiot was when he lost a 40-year-old Rafaela Sunsao. That was a problem. This fight had me worried. But then he came back, he beat Gravely. The Bajarat fight was a kick to the balls, but he looked good in that first round. He was winning. Actually, I think he literally won the first round on the judges' scorecards. Then there was a couple of nut kicks, and that fight didn't continue. And then he just beat Ronnie Yaya, who was taken down early, and then took over from there. Victor Henry is durable. Victor Henry lets his hands go. Victor Henry moves forward, and Victor Henry scores well in DraftKings Fantasy. I think he wins this fight. I think he scores well, and I think $8,000 is a great price point. So he's the pick, and I recommend him for your DraftKings lineup. Then we have Jasudavicius, and she is taking on Ariane Lipski or Ariane De Silva, whatever you want to call her. She's been married. Cry your tears. Jasudavicius, nasty wrestler. We've broken her down 100 times. Striking's not great, but she will come forward and she will let her hands go. And then she will shoot takedowns. And when she gets takedowns, she's got phenomenal control. Phenomenal control. And that's because she's a high-level wrestler who then turned to MMA. She didn't just start wrestling when she took up MMA. She was a wrestler first. She has that attitude, the run through the brick wall attitude. She's coming off this win over Fatima Klein where she was a big underdog for some reason. $7,800. Fatima Klein was going up in weight, stepping up on short notice, and Jasudavicius got the takedowns, very clearly had the control time, very clearly won that fight. She also smoked Priscilla Caceres. The Tracy Cortez fight, that was closer than a lot of people want to admit that it was. And that's really the only time that, because I'm looking at the Natalia Silva fight, and you can say like she looked bad. She didn't look bad in that fight either. Natalia Silva is just too freaking good, and her takedown defense is too good. So I'm going to say the Tracy Cortez fight is the only time where she actively worked in wrestling and striking and just still didn't get that win. I think it was a close fight. I'm not going to say I think she won. I'll get railroaded. That was a close fight. If we go all the way back to 2022, the Natalia Silva fight, that's when she really okay. She lost, very clearly lost that fight. But Natalia Silva's next level good right now. And this is a long rant to say Jasmine is very, very, very good. And I do think she wins this fight. She's fighting Ariane De Silva. You might see her as Ariane Lipski on your sportsbook or wherever you're going. Ariane Lipski is interesting. She's a decent striker. She's busy. She can grapple as well, but doesn't have the best wrestling. Her grappling needs to be offensive. She needs to be the one who gets the takedown. She needs to be the one who pressures forward. She needs to be the one who has the control. And if she can do all of those things, then Ariane Lipski can control the grappling. But if she's backing up, doesn't do as well. If she's taken down, can't work that well off of her back. And we just saw this in the Carini Silva fight. In the Carini Silva fight, she was taken down 3 times, couldn't really make it happen, and ultimately lost that fight. She had a giant chunk of her career here where she wasn't shooting takedowns and couldn't defend them. Then we move our way up, and all of a sudden she had 4 takedowns. She went 4 for 4, got these 2, this one, and this one. 4 for 4. Those are the only ones she attempted. Defended a bunch of takedowns there as well. But ultimately, if you wrestle the right way and you pressure her forward, you can get her down. I think Jasmine gets her down. I think Jasmine wins. Jasmine is very expensive at $9,000, but if she gets the takedowns and she gets the control, she could absolutely be worth it. Then we have Pedro Munoz taking on Aiemann Zahabi. this is another tricky fight because Pedro Munoz, if you're only looking at his resume, should dominate this fight. Aiemann Zahabi is one of the worst fighters that Pedro has fought in recent years. And I'm not saying that as an insult. I'm just saying that for perspective. He did just fight Kyler Phillips, and Kyler Phillips absolutely shit the bed and pissed everybody off. But in this fight, Kyler Phillips was superhuman cardio in this fight. Before that, he fought Chito Vera, former world title challenger Chito Vera. Chris Gutierrez, phenomenal striker. He dropped him. He almost had him knocked out. Pedro Munoz, who's not really a power guy. Before that, second round, they called the Sean O'Malley fight because of an eye poke. Pedro Munoz won the first round against Sean O'Malley. That is an objective fact. Check the scorecards. He lost to Dominic Cruz, fine. Lost to Jose Aldo, fine. Lost to Frankie Edgar, fine. Lost to Aljamain Sterling, fine. He's beating everybody he's supposed to beat, losing to the upper echelon in the world. Top-ranked guys, and then Kyler Phillips. This loss, on one hand, is problematic because Kyler's not great. On the other hand, Kyler showed up in the best shape we've ever seen him in and just did not stop. Pedro Munoz is a high-volume striker. He does have a guillotine. He's got some good jiu-jitsu, but he's not looking to shoot takedowns. He's a high-volume striker. And that is what worries me here because, again, looking at the resume, wow, he won a round off Sean O'Malley before the fight was called. He was going toe-to-toe with Dominic Cruz and Jose Aldo. He dropped Chris Gutierrez, who's supposed to be a phenomenal striker. And now he's fighting Aiemann Zahabi. But Aimann's pretty good. He's had high-level coaching his whole life. His brother runs TriStar MMA, where they built Georges St. Pierre, where they just reinvigorated a Rob Font to beat Kyler Phillips. And Aiemann Zahabi, all around, is a decent fighter. He's a good striker. He's got some hints of power in there. He's got very good takedown defense at 79%. He has high fight IQ. He's not a super high-volume guy, though. The volume actually is low, if anything, and he waits and he hangs out on the outside. He is talking this whole week, and, fighters always just say dumb shit to make it sound like they're exciting, even though they're not. But all week long, he's like, oh, Ilia Topuria just knocked out Max Holloway, which everybody said was impossible. And Pedro hasn't been knocked out, but I'm going to do to him. No, you're not. Aiemann Zahabi probably wins this fight. He probably does it by dancing around on the outside and just having the cleaner strikes. And he's the Canadian. That's probably what happens here. And therefore, you can't spend that money. Yes, he does have power. He knocked out a Richie Lang. The Rodriguez knockout, this is Draco Rodriguez. That was impressive. But outside of that, we're not seeing that power. He found it recently, but we're not seeing a ton of it. There's hints. That's why I said hint of power. I do think Aiemann can win this fight because I think he can be more technical. I think he's the better coach. This Javid Bajarat win was infuriating. 61 points in a win. He spammed right hands while his corner was going, hey, oh. And the judges were like, wow, they sound excited and he must be winning this fight. That annoyed me. Aiemann probably wins. Do not touch this with DraftKings Fantasy. Don't touch it. Do not touch it. Mike Malott in the main card opener. Mike Malott, officially, we now know a quitter. We saw it with our own eyes. We saw him quit against Neil Magny. Was smoking Neil. Round 3, KO, TKO. He was smoking Neil. Very clearly won the first 2 rounds. Then things get a little bit tough at the end of the third round. Just balls up. Says, yeah, call it. I'm done. I can't possibly survive another minute. Just call it. Call it. And they called it. And he lost. And it sucked. Because he burned a lot of people. $9,300. Let's say he survived. He would have scored 90 points. Right? Let's say he survived. He was going to win that decision. He would have scored 90 points. That wouldn't have covered his salary. But Neil Magny's a tried and true vet. And Mike Malott's a well-rounded guy. He's a guy that started MMA as an MMA fighter, meaning he didn't have any background. He's not a former wrestler. He's not a former kickboxer. He's nothing. He started MMA. He's athletic. He's in shape. Can be powerful. Good grappling. All the things. He's had 5 fights under the UFC umbrella. He's got a couple of knockdowns, a knockout, 3 submissions. Well-rounded guy, sort of this next generation of fighter that's good at all the things and didn't need to come from another sport. He is taking on Trevin Giles. This fight is set up for Mike Malott to win. Trevin Giles is not bad. He's got a very good jab. At one point in time, they talked about it like it was the best jab in the UFC. He's not a bad fighter at all. He can be busy with that jab. He's got good footwork, great takedown defense because he's so athletic, but he's not particularly powerful. He's not particularly dangerous. He can just win fights with a busy jab. He's not going to be shooting many takedowns either. You're going to see he does have a win here against Roman Dolidze. That was one of the worst decisions we've ever seen. That was a bad decision. So Trevin Giles can win this fight, especially since we saw Mike Malott quit. But I think Mike Malott gets it done. I think he comes forward. I think he stays in Trevin's face. I think he puts on a show in Canada, and I think he gets it done. Trevin Giles is not Neil Magny. He's more athletic than Neil Magny, but Neil Magny has fought also some of the best people on the planet. So Mike Malott's going to be the pick. I am undecided if he will be in my DraftKings fantasy lineup or not, because he's going to have to finish Trevin. And yes, Trevin has been finished basically in all of his losses, but the takedown defense is good, and Mike might be playing it safe after the last fight. Mike should win, probably okay for your lineup. I'll make a game time decision if I actually put him in or not. That takes us to Marc-Andre Barrot taking on Dustin Stoltzfus. Do not put Marc-Andre in your lineup. $8,900 is too much money to spend. And yes, his opponent can be finished, but don't do it. Don't spend that money. Marc-Andre Barrot is a busy come-forward striker. Well-rounded overall, good kickboxing, solid takedowns, good jiu-jitsu. He's typically looking to pressure you forward, wear you down on your feet. Impressive striking volume at 6 significant strikes landed per minute. But he is hit with 5. He gets hit a lot. We just watched him get knocked out by Joe Pyfer. We just watched him get outworked by Chris Curtis, who doesn't typically outwork people. Obviously, Fluffy smoked him, but somehow that dude's beating everybody right now. Chidi Njokuani smoked him. All right, Chidi's dangerous. Like, he's got a hit or miss career, but ultimately, Marc-Andre Barrot's coming forward, staying busy with the striking, and just looking to stay in your face and outwork you. He is taking on Dustin Stoltzfus. Dustin Stoltzfus is much better than his record. He also is not the most durable guy in the world. And I'm saying don't put Marc-Andre in your lineup because I'm worried that Marc-Andre could potentially get finished here or that he's just going to work through a decision. But if you're only looking at the Dustin side, this is not the most durable guy in the world. His only decision loss is to Dawkins. Vieira subbed him. Mearshart subbed him, but that's fine. 2 very high-level grapplers. Magomedov knocked him out. Okay. Diego Ferreira knocked him out. Okay. But those are quality losses to quality opponents. Dustin Stoltzfus is a busy striker. He's got good power. He's got a black belt in his country's version of Sambo, so he can grapple. He has throws. He has takedowns. He's a big guy. He's in shape. He's all the things. I am going to stay away from this fight. I think Marc-Andre wins. I think they did him a favor and said, try to get a win in Canada at home. We have not been kind to the Canadian people the last couple of times we've come here. So please try to get a win at home. But I just don't know if Marc-Andre is going to pour it on. I don't know if he's going to be able to break through Dustin Stoltzfus and finish him the way that some of these other very dangerous people have, because Marc-Andre is not as dangerous. This could be a decision, just a volume striking decision from Marc-Andre. Dustin could be working in a takedown, both coming off knockouts, both coming off, losses that, while quality on paper aren't what you're looking for as far as confidence is concerned heading into a fight. You're just knocked out by Diego Ferreira and you're going to go swinging hard. He might take his time. Marc-Andre Barrot, just knocked out by Joe Pyfer. He's not going to come in swinging hard. So this might be sort of a pitter-patter, busy striking match on both sides. We end up with a decision. Nobody's worth the money. That's a very long breakdown for a fight that ultimately I picked Marc-Andre and said, don't put either one in your lineup. Then we have Caio Machado taking on Brinson Ribeiro. Caio Machado is looking for his first win in the UFC. He is winless, unfortunately for him. He is better than that, though. Pretty well-rounded guy. He sits around 250-ish pounds as a heavyweight. He's working his way down from heavyweight. He's making life adjustments, looking to go to light heavyweight, trying to make stuff happen there. And that's what we've got. So I don't know what he's going to look like here at light heavyweight. Let's assume he's going to look great. And let's assume he has those skills from heavyweight and they've come down. He's a rangy guy. He stays active instead of just like slow and lumbering. He's got good volume, good footwork. He'll back up well and throw counters, and he could also push forward and stay busy with jabs. He's got nice clinch work, okay takedowns. His BJJ is good as well. He is coming off this loss to Dontel Mays, where you saw the good speed, the good movement, but Dontel's just too big, hits too hard. And ultimately, the loss to McParkin, the loss to Dontel, he's like, I got to go down to light heavyweight. He is taking on, where is it? Brenson Ribeiro. This guy is all offense, very dangerous early, but quickly fades. He's got solid grappling, but you don't see a ton of it, right? We did see a lot of grappling and some wild exchanges against Gatsiulov, but the reality is Brenson Ribeiro is dangerous early and then slows down quickly after that. He's aggressive. He hunts for submissions. He's busy off his back. If you take him down, he's busy on top. He'll throw heavy. He will chase that finish. But if you can weather the storm and you can stay tough, he does have a quit button. He is coming off, I mentioned this loss to Gadziulov, whatever the hell it is, Gadziulov, where he basically started panic wrestling. These 3 takedowns are panic wrestle takedowns because he started the gas, wasn't having a ton of experience. I think Caio Machado wins this fight. But given the unknowns of his new weight class, given the fact that neither one of these guys have won a fight in an actual UFC event, I'm going to fade it. I got to fade both sides here, but I do think Caio Machado gets the win he's just a better fighter. He's not the more dangerous, but he is the better fighter. Then we have Jonathan Deniz taking on Derek Lewis. Striker versus striker. You're probably going to have to pick your side here for a winning lineup because somebody's going to get knocked out. Obviously, it's heavyweights. It could be a staring contest. We've seen it before. But Derek Lewis tends to bring that out of people. His last 2 fights, he's come out like a shotgun shell. Jonathan Deniz is a high-level striker. He had professional kickboxing experience before moving over to MMA. He throws in combinations, clean defense, great speed for his size. Takedown defense is okay. Relatively untested, right? We did just see Carl Williams take him down a few times, but Janata also had that guy 99% knocked out and was more focused on trying to get the knockout than he was on defending the takedowns. He's taking on Derek Lewis, the all-time knockout king. Derek Lewis literally has more knockouts than anybody else in the history of the UFC. That's what he does. I mean, his last 2 wins were knockouts. Rodrigo Nascimento knocked him out. 3rd round. He came out fast, but ultimately got to the 3rd round, got the knockout there. Rogerio de Lima, that's Marcos Rogerio de Lima. If you remember, that was the flying knee from the other side of the octagon. I think that was all of 3 seconds. Just ran bink. Lately, Derek Lewis has been coming out hot. Obviously, Jailton Almeida beat him, but again, I said earlier, I think Jailton Almeida beats almost everybody. The problem is Derek Lewis, while he is the knockout king, he also gets knocked out. Tai Tuivasa finished him. Sergey Pavlovich finished him. Spivak just took him down and subbed him, whatever. Jailton Almeida took him down a million times, didn't even try to finish him, but you get the point here. He's not invincible. He gets knocked out. I think this is going to be whoever lands first. If you are very confident in the all-time knockout king, throw him in your lineup at $7,600. Certainly the large tournament GPP lineups where you can get multiple entries. If you're confident in Jonathan Deniz, same thing. He's relatively affordable for a guy that might put up well over 100 points knocking out Derek Lewis early. I don't think this is going to get out of the first round. And if this does get out of the first round, then this fight's going to suck. It's either a staring contest or somehow it's Derek Nurmagomedov. We should know everything we need to know in the first minute. But obviously you'll have your lineup locked by then. I think Jonathan Deniz wins this fight. I will probably have him in a lineup or 2. Certainly the large tournament entries. Then we have the co-main event of the evening. Erin Blanchfield taking on Rose Namajunas. Listen, the Erin Blanchfield love this week is crazy. And I get like loving her as a fighter and thinking she's good because she is good. She's got great jiu-jitsu. Great jiu-jitsu. She's insanely tough. She's a busy striker. It's not great striking, but she's improving it. She's busy. She's tough. She's not a quitter. She's got all the qualities you want. All I say is her takedowns kind of suck and people lose their minds. They lose their minds. And you know what? Her takedowns do suck. 0 for 14 against Taila Santos. She tried to take her down 14 times, got 0 of them. She tried to take down Manon like 4 times, got 0 of them. And Manon just danced around and lit her ass up. Erin Blanchfield is very, very dangerous. And you know what? If you think she wins, $8,400 is an incredible price point. Because she does fight her ass off. She is not a quitter. She landed 130 significant strikes in her last fight, even though she couldn't get a single takedown. She is taking on former world champion Rose Namajunas. Rose Namajunas was the 115-pound champion, multiple-time 115-pound world champion. She moved up in weight after this loss to Carla Esparza. this was a staring contest. Nothing. Literally one of the worst fights we have ever seen in our entire lives. Everybody knows that. It was one of the worst fights ever. But she's got 2 wins over Weili. She avenged the Jessica Andrade loss. The first one was a fluke. Jessica picked her up, slammed her on her head. She came back, beat Jessica. Beat Joanna Jędrzejczyk. She has 4 wins. 2 against Joanna, 2 against Weili. 4 wins over 2 of the division's best ever. Rose Namajunas is one of the best 115-pound fighters that have ever lived. And I get not liking her personally, or her personality, at least her on-camera personality. But she's very, very good. Tracy Cortez, obviously not as dangerous as Erin Blanchfield, but she's got good enough wrestling. Tracy Cortez did have 2 takedowns, but she didn't have the success everybody thought she would. Rose Namajunas has good footwork. Rose Namajunas has good striking. I think Rose Namajunas wins this fight. I am going to have her in my lineup. With that being said, I fully understand the love for Erin Blanchfield, because if she gets it to the ground, she might not need much. She might not need much if she gets it to the ground. I'm going Rose. I think Rose gets it done. I think the experience difference between the two will matter. 5 rounds. Obviously, we just watched Erin Blanchfield fight 5 rounds, but it's still different. Rose has fought 5 rounds more than she's fought 3. Rose is going to be the pick. I fully understand if you're on the other side, but don't come into the comment section defending Erin's takedowns. They fucking suck. Amir Albazi, $7,700 will be in my lineup. I think he wins as a dog. Period. You guys are going to say, he lost to Kai Kara-France. Yeah, he did lose the guy. This was a bad decision. I agree with you. Kai landed twice as many strikes and had more takedowns. I agree with you. I think Kai Kara-France won that fight. I still think Amir Albazi beats Brandon Moreno. Those are 2 different statements, and putting them together is a weird thing to do. Amir Albazi is a busy striker. He's a danger striker. He's got very good wrestling and very good grappling. He sets a good pace. He's got a long jab. Amir Albazi does all the things the right way. In this fight, he's saying, we're a year removed. He's saying, I wasn't healthy. Whatever. Avoid the excuses. But let's take a look at what has happened since this fight. Okay? Since Amir Albazi beat Kai Kara-France, Kai Kara-France has looked phenomenal. Has had a couple of phenomenal wins. Since Amir Albazi beat Kai Kara-France, Brandon Moreno has lost 2 decisions in a row. He lost his belt to Pantoja. He lost to Brandon Royval. And you could argue he won the Royval fight. Like, if you want to make that case, I was making that case for a while. But he didn't look like himself. He was flat-footed. He was throwing 1 strike at a time. He wasn't the busy, nonstop guy that we've come to love. Something is up with Brandon Moreno. I don't know if he fell out of love with the sport. I don't know if he's been through too many wars. He had 4 fights with Figgy. 4 fights with Figgy. And 3 of them were drag him out wars. So I don't know. Maybe it's those wars that brought it out of him. Kai Kara-France was lighting Brandon Moreno up before Brandon got the finish as well. Brandon Moreno is one of the most liked guys in the sport. He built his entire career on being tough, having forward pressure, never quitting, never stopping. And we saw that. We had all of that, all of it. Had it. And then when he lost the belt to Pantoja, and it was really just like one well-timed takedown that ultimately was the difference between him beating Pantoja and losing to Pantoja. When he lost that belt, something went with it because he was not himself in that Royval fight. He took time off. He's talked about his struggles mentally, his struggles emotionally. So I think Brandon Moreno is still going to be a little flat. I think Amir Albazi will take care of that. I'm fully aware. Amir had neck surgery and heart surgery. I get it. I get all the things. I still think Amir wins this fight. Therefore, I will have the underdog, the very affordable Amir Albazi in my 5-round lineup for DraftKings Fantasy. If you disagree, no problem. Throw Brandon Moreno in there. He is proven to fight for your money. 66 points in a loss. 95 points in a loss against Pantoja. You might want to double this up if you think it's a war. Either way, I'm going to pick Amir Albazi, but building DraftKings Fantasy lineups is a whole different thing, which is why tools like the Optimizer are very important. This will build the lineups for you. You set your exposure levels, it spits the lineups out. You also have access to the cheat sheet if you want to see what the ownership projections are for each fighter, their leverage score, what type of entry you should or should not use a fighter in, what the DraftKings projections are going to be as far as ownerships are concerned. You have access to that. These are the results of those ownership projections. We're the best in the business, literally. UFC 308, we were quite literally the best on the planet. It's only $10 to unlock every single thing that we offer, whether it's fantasy or betting. WeWantPicks.com. Click Become a Member at the top. It's $10 for an entire month, and that month includes UFC 309.